there's a quick PowerPoint presentation. I know, oh my God, PowerPoint. So 19th century. Um, and I want to just get through it because it's got a lot of the bullets and the main ideas that I want to talk about in the class. But really what I want to spend the time, because I don't think we have a whole lot of time here, is do one-on-ones with people. So to actually live go through the machine that I'm going to show you with some of your stories. The the importance of this topic, I can't emphasize enough. And I've really kind of come to understand this more in the last year or so since I've been looking at YouTube. A lot of agents and agencies have YouTube channels now. And there's one in particular I've been watching called Bookends Literary. Love these people. They are so authentic. I just love these agents. Um, but they do a lot of videos, and a lot of other agents are too, about the query process and about the writing process and about what gets you a deal and what closes a deal and what gets you rejected from a deal. And the things that most people don't want to even think about, like word count and stuff like that, will literally get you thrown in the round file if you don't get those things right. These things matter, and log lines matter. They are your first foot in the door in your query. And if it doesn't pop, you're gone. They got 20 other ones they've got to read that day. So log lines, while the term is it came out of the movie business, because there was literally a log book with a line for every book the studio had, for every movie the studio had going, right? That's where log line came from. Um, this idea of the log line is a pitching tool. What this is all about, sales and marketing, all about sales and marketing. That's what the log line is. But with that said, you can't get one of these log line things unless you know your story. Okay. You must understand the basic structure. You have to know who the protagonist is. You'd be shocked how many people don't really know who their protagonist is, or they think they've got five protagonists. You don't. um, who the opposition is. Well, what's an opposition? I've got five oppositions. You have lots of oppositions, but there needs to be a central opponent. More genre, the more true that has to be. Okay. So you must know these things at a high, at least at a high level before you can even begin to develop a log line. And you're going to see why when I go through the machine, because it is literally a machine. Okay. But there's a lot of artistry to it as well. Okay. So I come out of the movie TV industry, but I also write prose fiction. If you go to my Amazon page, you'll see I've got a bunch of prose stuff up there, mostly novellas, short fiction. Um, but I'm really about story development. My whole thing is about you must, and this is what is not taught in MFA programs and writing programs and all the big famous conferences and so on. Writing and storytelling are two different things, and they have literally nothing to do with one another. And I usually have to stop there and just let people grok that, because does anybody disagree with that statement? Do you think writing and story, you must write in order to know your story? That's where you get your story from, because stories tell themselves, right? Characters tell themselves, tell their own stories, right? You're just the conduit, right? That's what you learn in the creative writing cult that I call it, that's out there. Writers just write. Don't edit, don't censor, don't just write, write. Writers write. So just do it. It'll all come out in the wash. Stephen King gives this advice. Write your book in 3 months. Stick it in a drawer, come back to it in a few months, do the rewrite. He can do that because he's unbelievably talented. He's got what I call the story gene. He can get away with that because he knows where not to go with his writing intuitively. Most people don't have that skill set. You write your book in 3 months, put in a drawer, you're going to have garbage, probably. Not because you're bad and wrong, just you don't know story skills. Okay. And those come to him naturally. It's the worst writing advice you can possibly give. This is why I'm so happy NaNoWriMo disappeared because it is one of the worst things to happen to the creative writing community ever. You only end up with 50,000 words of word salad. You don't have a book. And now you got to go back after the fact and figure it out. Whereas you could have figured it out before you started writing pages and saved yourself literally half the time. Okay. So I'm getting into a lot of details here, but I want to share my screen real quick. So what we're getting into here is a fundamental tool that you need, everybody needs. Okay. This is what you're going to get after I'm done here. You're going to get all this free swag. Okay. You're going to get the presentation as a PDF. I'll send this to Linda later. You're going to get the logline worksheet, which I use normally when I teach this. It's in my anatomy of a premise line class, okay, which is my foundational story development class based on the book. And we go through premise line, log line, short synopsis. These are three things. These aren't hoops I just make people jump through because I get to do it. These are things that you must have as an author to sell a book. You've got to have the log line for your pitch. You've got to have the premise line for your pitch after the pitch because they're going to go, oh, what do you got? Show me more. And then if they go, yes, let's do this, you've got to have a synopsis. These are deliverables you have to have as a professional. Okay. So we go through those, developing those in that class. Okay. So you're going to get the logline worksheet that we use in that class with an example so you can see how one is actually filled out for the film Amadeus. There'll be a link to a how-to video so you can actually, because you're going to forget all this anyway. So you can go back and you can look at that and you can uh, learn how to do that. You're going to get a really cool ebook and a couple of cool posters. Okay. So you're going to get some free stuff. Thanks for coming. Now, let me tell you a quick story where this all came from. I was at the Dallas Fort Worth Writers Conference and I was teaching a workshop. And at the very end of the workshop, they have this thing called the Gong Show. And everybody comes to a big ballroom and they sit there and they have about 6 or 7 agents and editors from big companies and small boutiques up on stage, and they've got a gong in front of them. And people are invited to anonymously pitch their books. And the pitch is read, and the agents, if you get 3 gongs, you're out. 99 out of 100 people who pitched got gonged. And this is where I developed the machine. And the machine also comes out of the entertainment business. This is what TV writers do when they pitch their shows. So I know this works because it sells TV shows. But I heard these pitches and I said, oh my God, there are some good ideas here, but they just didn't have a clue how to get to the idea. And I went up to a couple of the agents and I put it in the framework that I understand. And they said, well, if they had pitched me that, I would have wanted to see more. So I said, I got something here. So that's where this came out of a real world experience. That is my point. Okay. So why do you need one of these logline things? Well, like I said, it's a sales tool. You need it for your query letters. In a query letter, they're all emails now. Nobody sends out query letters. And you've got half of a page max, an email page to pitch your book. Okay. So you need a log line to catch them up front as part of the pitching process. But it's also a development tool. It's also something that you can do along the way to be one of your canaries in the coal mine to know that you've got something. Okay. But this is really, really, really all about sales. And what you're going to see here, because like I said, I teach this in the anatomy of premise line class. We have the benefit in that class of having been through the premise line process, the basic core story structure process, so that before students get to this point, they know their stories pretty well. We're going to do this live with a couple of people. You're going to see there's going to be a lot of struggling because we haven't been through, I haven't talked with you and worked with you on your story. And I don't know your stories for Mistake Sandwich at this point. So it's going to be a little awkward, but you're going to see where if you don't know some of these questions, you're immediately going to go into a brick wall. Okay, so just know that those are the warts I'm talking about here. The doing a log line and not knowing these things, you're going to immediately see the problems. I'm not looking at the chat, Linda, so if there's any questions that come up, please, yeah, yeah. Okay, basic 7 mistakes people make, and you're going to get this, so we don't have to spend too much time on all these, but the main ideas here are that people mistake log lines for hooks or for explanations about their story. And this is what I heard from these agents and editors. When people pitched, they never got to the point. And you'll hear if you listen to the bookends agents, when they look for pitches, people just talk around the idea or they get fancy schmancy and go, now let's see what happens to our hero. And that kind of stuff just turns them off completely, as it should, you know. And then a really cool thing happens at the end. You'd be surprised how many times I've seen that at the end of pitches. None of that works. It's just the facts, ma'am. Tell the story. Okay. And if you these are the mistakes that people make. Okay. They think they're hooks. They use a lot of platitudes and memes. They have a lot of authorial intrusion. And now I'm going to tell you the really cool stuff that happens in the middle. People write that kind of stuff. No, you should not be in this at all. Okay. And the biggest problems are they just don't get to it fast enough. And these editors are just gonna kick you right out the door. Okay. If you type in log line on the internet, you're gonna get this. Okay. None of this is wrong, but none of it's helpful. This isn't gonna none of this is gonna get you a log line. This is how the internet defines it. Okay. Here's how I define it. It's the narrative point of your story that conveys the high concept, the tone, and the core of your premise. You must have a premise. That's the story idea. The premise line is so fundamentally critical. It is your entire story and the structure of your story in about 150 words. Oh, you can't possibly do that. Yeah, you can. And I've done and the examples I have it for The Great Gatsby, I have it for Jaws, I have the book Jaws, I have it for a bunch of other things. It can be done. It's the art of summarization, though. You must know how to summarize. You can't tell the whole story, obviously, but you can get to the core of it in a very beginning, middle, end kind of structured way, so that if somebody reads a premise line, they'll get it. They'll get the whole thing. Okay. You have to know that before you go into this. But the log line captures that in a very functional way. Okay. Takes the form of of 2 or 3, actually 2.5 lines, no more. We're talking 35, 55 words. Well, who came up with that? Well, a lot of people. That's kind of a standard in the movie business and the TV business. You could go over, if it's catchy enough, if it's interesting enough, you can get away with 3 lines of text. It's written in third person, omniscient voice, present tense. You don't name characters. You go the cop or the housewife or whoever it is. You don't name names. Okay, and it has to convey all those functional things on the right. Oh my God! In 35 words, you're gonna pack all that stuff into there? Yes. You'll be shocked. When you see the machine, you'll understand how we get here. But when you get this stuff, you will have a log line. Okay. First, let's quickly talk about hooks. This is what most people think log lines are. Is the hook, the thing that grabs, got to grab you. Here's the thing that grabs you. You know, hooks are what's the sexy, what's the big conceit, what's the image that it conveys. It captures the high concept very quickly. Here are some examples from some famous TV shows and one I just made up. Okay. If you saw the Jessica Jones series, this captures it perfectly. Or the old TV show Transparent before they canceled the actor and the show. And then the Hunger Games. It doesn't tell you the story. You don't know what the story is, but you know what the hook is. An out-of-town couple gets stranded in a small town and discover it's run by aliens. Okay, you got me. I don't know if it's a comedy. I don't know if it's a horror movie, but you got me. There's something really cool there, right? That's a hook. That's not a log line. Okay. Here's a log line. And it's written in this order. Now, you can obviously mix it up if it just kind of happens that way, but go for the order. You have to convey the world. Chicago, 1958. Okay, we're in the 18th century whaling community. Okay, that's the world. We know exactly where we are. Who's the protagonist? A ingenue whaling sailor joins the Pequot. Okay, we know who the protagonist is. We don't have to get his name. Ishmael, right? From Moby Dick, right? What's their moral problem? Not Don't be too worried about that right now because that's a whole cluster, you know what? Getting into the moral problem. The moral problem is the engine of your book. Without a moral problem, you're going to have an episodic mess. Well, we can talk about that in class if you want, but it's the angst. What's the problem the character's got to solve internally? What are they happy or how are they tortured? Okay, what's their problem? If you don't get this isn't a deal breaker, but this is something you've got to have a story versus something I call a situation. Okay. There's got to be a story goal for the character. What does the protagonist want? What's their objective? Oh, they want to be happy. They want to be one with God. They want to bring world peace. No, it must be tangible. They want the girl. They want the shiny red truck. Okay. There's got to be an end game. An agent's not going to go with, they want a happy, fulfilled life. That's not going to sell your book. That's going to get you in the round file. What's the story challenge? This is the problem they face story-wise. What's stopping them from getting the goal? What is the big challenge they've got to overcome? Well, the aliens are invading. That's the problem. They're trying to get to Chicago to save their kid. Okay, War of the Worlds, right? But they got to traverse the alien invasion. This is their problem. Okay. Who's trying to stop them? Well, life is trying to stop them. The nature is against them. They've got the storms and the earthquakes and the locusts and the flies. No, the opponent has to be human. There's got to be a person who's trying to stop them from getting what they want. If you don't, you have no conflict. You only have a character up against the nature or the evil dark forces that are unnamed. You can't that's just going to be very so abstract. There's no core going on for the story in terms of the conflict. Who is trying to stop the protagonist? Well, we got five people trying to stop. Okay, which one of those stands out the most? There will always be one. The more personal, the better. Meaning the closer personally they are to the protagonist, the better. Okay, if they know the protagonist, all the better. In a love story, the opponent is the other lover. The main character is one of the lovers. The other one, if you're writing a romance, that's how it is. One of the characters is your POV character. It's not equal. The other lover is the main opposition character. It's through that opposition they grow and change, and together at the end of the story take on the external opposition, if there is one, like the evil stepmother trying to break up the marriage. Then they win the day. But they've got to solve what's wrong in the relationship first if they're going to do that. That's the core relationship. And then you end your log line with some no-win choice or decision. They must learn how to do this, or they must learn to do this. Both of them are bad. That leaves us with, well, what the hell are they going to do? I want to know. I know where this is going. It's going to a really difficult spot. Okay? You don't hold your punches back. You you spoil. Or if they take a very specific action at the end of the story, they blow up the alien mothership. Okay? And that's the action they take. But that's all got to make sense for what you wrote before. Okay? Do you get a very high level of sense of this now? The log line tells the story, but without telling the story. It's a real this is a dark art for sure. That's why you have to know so much of your story before you write this thing. Here's some examples. Again, you're going to get this. One's 52 words, one's 53 words, one's 48 words. Okay. I've highlighted in red the machine elements. Read these. Just you can go through these and read them. They, at a very high level, tell you what the entire story is going to be without getting into any real detail. And these took a long time to figure out. And I've also got one for the Great Gatsby, which I will share with you. But just to show you that it's not just movies and high concept TV shows that you do this with. This works with great literature. If you write this as a log line in your query, you're probably going to, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get somebody saying, "Oh, I love this." You got to jump through all these other hoops. Like, does this fit their publishing schedule? Is this something that they actually do? I mean, there's lots of other hoops you have to jump through. But if you do these with your story, you can feel confident that you're doing the right thing. You're doing your job. Do these make sense? Is there anyone that thinks this is hooey and you really want to just keep it fluffy but do you see the concreteness of this? And again, this is just a couple of 2.5 lines of text. The Godfather, you know exactly what's going on here, what the motivation is, what the problem is. What's Michael's problem? He's being shielded by his family all his life. He doesn't belong. He doesn't belong. That's his problem. That's the moral problem. And he's going to do everything he can to get back into the family, which he does, stepping over every body that comes in front of him. This is not a good feel-good story. This is a guy that turns into the monster at the end and doesn't know it. It's a horror story. Okay. So there is a strategy for this as well. Once you get the machine pieces on a piece of paper, you apply this strategy. Get them in order, or the order you think works best. Now you start to wordsmith. The first one you're going to do might be 200 words. Guaranteed it will be. Now you start wordsmithing. You start pulling out the adjectives, adverbs, all the fluff, all the explanation, all the internal angsty stuff, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, all has to go. Start wordsmithing.
Hey, Jeff, somebody asked me if on that previous screen where you had those log lines, can those be broken up into multiple sentences?
Yes, you can have a couple of sentences. Ideally, you want to keep it one sentence, but if you've got five, now five sentences can work too. I mean, if they're just really short, fast, punchy, you know, you know, if that works for sales for you for your story, if you've got a real high concept action story or something like that, that can actually be done for sure. You know, I'm keeping it, you know, one sentence, but you know, yeah, exactly. That's a great question.
Okay, great, thanks.
Once you get it down to a couple of three lines, then you want to nail your tone and genre. Make sure if you're writing a horror story, it's scary. Make sure if you're writing a romance, it's clear what the romance is. Is it a dramedy? Is it a, is it um, Romeo and Juliet and it's a tragedy? It's got to reflect the genre. The tone's got to reflect the genre. So you start picking genre words. And then you redo, then you rewordsmith. Does that make sense? Cut, cut, cut. And that's how you do this thing. Okay? So let me open it up for questions real quick before we actually jump in with a couple of volunteers. So one question I have, is this something you have never seen before? Is this something you already know? And it's like, thank you very much, Mr. Lyons. Goodbye. Okay, now I'll answer that in a second. And
Okay,
you can unmute, you can,
somebody did ask one question that said, what's the difference between
yeah,
the log line and the premise line?
yeah. Yes, Belinda. Everybody struggles with that. Making a log line compelling. Uh, okay. Feel free to unmute yourselves and talk. You know, this isn't, you know, I don't have to be the only voice here. So if you have a question, just jump in or raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, the elevator pitch, Todd, is your premise line. Okay. You got 10 floors. You got somebody gets in the elevator, you got 10 floors to pitch them your story. You've got to be able to do it in 10 floors. You know, so that's why you need that 150 maximum 200 word summarization of the entire story. That's what the premise line is all about. Anatomy of a premise line book is all about that. Okay. It's different than a log line. Log line is the sales pitch of the story that gives the person who's reading the hook, the tone, the genre, all those elements in a very short blurb. That's not your story. They know what the adventure is going to be, but they don't know the story. And when I say the story, I'm talking about the character's personal journey. What is the story? It's always personal. They've got to change. That's the story. Everything else is at service to that. If you don't have that, then you have what I call a situation. Not bad, not wrong, but not a story. The movie Speed, Jurassic Park. That's not a story. It's a situation. The 20 something kids caught in the cabin in the woods and the monsters outside going to eat them. That's not a story. It's a situation. They have to solve a puzzle. They have to solve a mystery. That has to be fun, engaging, and entertaining. No one's going to have any 12th hour awarenesses about, oh my God, when I was 5, the doctor dropped me on the floor in my head, and oh my, that explains all my life problems. No. The only question is who's going to get out alive? How bloody is it going to get? That's it. You have to be entertaining and engaging. You have to do that with a story too. But in a story, you've got a character who's got a moral problem. I'm screwed up and I'm acting badly in the world. Now, that doesn't mean they're pushing pins in the eyeballs of puppies and that, no, they could just be unemotionally available. That's hurting other people. They've got to be hurting other people. That's the moral component. They have to learn how to overcome that over 200, 300 pages in the middle of your book. And then at the end, they get there because of all the hell you put them through. The lovers become lovers because of the hell you put them through. They don't start off loving each other. They don't. They're oil and water, right? Oh, you know, all the time. Romances never start. Or if they do, it very quickly falls apart. But there's that angst. You can't get away from that angst, right? But nope, nope, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. That's the story.
We
Not the
romance
situation.
writers love that angst, and that's what
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
about. Tracy, go ahead and come off mute and ask your
Yeah,
question.
Tracy. Yeah, yeah, Tracy.
I think that's one thing that I struggle with in trying to work on my log line is the difference between the moral problem and the goal in the story because
What do you think what do you think the difference is?
well, to me in my story at least the moral problem is how the character herself needs to change.
Yes. So how does she need to change?
She devoted herself so much to work that she drove her daughter away. So she needs to find more balance in her life to
Okay.
regain a
Why did she
relationship with her daughter.
why I'm going to interrupt you a lot. Why did she do that? Why did she
Uh,
make that choice to be obsessive about that and drive her daughter away? Why did she do that?
because she was trying to provide a stable environment because her husband died of a heart attack when they were
Why
dating.
didn't she do it in such a way that the daughter wouldn't be scared away?
It's all she knew how to do
Why?
and she was successful and she bought
Why?
into the success.
Why? This
Hmm.
is the question that will drive you all crazy. You must ask why. I have an obsessive character who's got to get X, Y, Z correct at the expense of relationships. Oh, okay. I can write a book about that. But if you ask the question, well, why are they doing that? You have a whole different book. Here's an example. I must get this right because if I don't, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. It's not about my daughter. It's not about anybody. It's about me. I can't be seen as a failure because that means I'll never be loved. That's my dirty little secret. Okay. I had this with a character with a student. We were trying to figure out her moral problem. Okay, what's the character's moral problem? Well, my character isn't enough. They don't feel they're enough. And there's only about 15 of these things that every character is going to, it's the usual suspects. I'm not lovable. I don't belong. I'm not enough. I don't deserve. That's the generic, what I call the generic moral blind spot. So if she's being driven to do something in a certain specific way, she's making a life choice not to do it in a healthy way. Why? What happens if she doesn't do it the other way? Or if she tries to do it the other way and fails, what's the price she's going to pay? Okay, you've got to answer that question. So this particular student, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Okay, well, okay, all right, we can go with that. I'm not enough. How does she know she would be enough? What would she have, be, or do in order to know in the moment, oh, I'm enough now? If she was in a lineup of people who were enough and she's the only one not enough, and somebody had to come along and pick the one person who's not enough and they picked her, how would they know to do that? What would they see? If being enough came up and bit them on the ass, what would it look like? Answer those questions. Okay. She couldn't.
Hmm.
And then, as with all of you, because you all know your stories better than I ever will, out of the mouths of babes, she said, "Oh, well, she's such a scaredy cat." And she just didn't see anything there, but it was like an explosion in my head. Oh, okay. She's not enough because she's a scaredy cat. What is she afraid of? And we just drilled down, and it all came down to courage. I'm a coward. Don't trust me. I'll never get it done because I'm weak. I'm a coward. That was her dirty little secret. And she had to learn at the end of the story, she always had courage. It's like, the lion and Wizard of Oz, right? You've always had it. You just, what you didn't have was, the proof, right? That's the story. Your character's willing to lose her daughter to do something the way she thinks she's got to do it. Because if she doesn't, what is she think's going to happen? That's your story, not what you've set up.
Okay.
Okay? The
Hmm.
goal, now, if you've got a character who's obsessive about getting things done and winning, they're not going to want to go off to an ashram. They're not going to have a story goal of going to India and becoming one with whatever. That's not going to be their story goal. They need a goal consistent with their problem. I want the next big win. I want to get the movie. I want to get the job. I want to get the shiny brass ring. That's their goal. The goal's tangible. The goal must be consistent with their problem. This is really hard stuff, folks. This is story development. You can see how if you don't know this shit, pardon my French, you're going to be writing yourself into blind alleys, hundreds of pages of stuff you're then going to have to go through to find your stuff. This will save you so much time if you just learn story development. Please don't have to do any of my stuff. You don't ever have to listen to my stuff, say my name or anything. Go out and find somebody else, but learn how to do it. Okay, does that make sense? So problem
Yeah.
and goal are very different, but they're related. Okay. You don't have a
Hmm.
story engine if you don't have a problem. That I'm weak. I'm weak. It's the core belief they have about who they think they are as a person that is fundamentally wrong. That's the blind spot. Blind spots, we all have them. Those are behaviors we exhibit in the world that reflect our motivation in our own lives that we don't see, but everybody else sees in our behavior. There's three things that make up the moral problem: the blind spot itself, I'm weak; the moral effects, the effects are the behaviors that source from that blind spot that protect the character from being exposed. I'm weak, I must be strong. Therefore, they're going to act in a very specific way when their weakness is threatened. And then the dynamic moral tension, which is what they are doing versus what they should be doing. Being being mealy-mouthed and passive aggressive and never taking a stand versus owning your authenticity and stepping up and risking being wrong. That's the dynamic moral tension. Okay. It's not paragraphs of explanation about behavior. No, it's that simple. How they're acting badly versus how they should be acting. You get those three things, oh my gosh, you're cooking with gas.
Okay, Rebecca had a question about, she said, so would the tagline be before the log line in the pitch? What would you do if XYZ? And then have the log line, which shares a story. And she gives an example. She says, the tagline in Jurassic Park, an adventure 65 million years in the making. And then the log line is, a theme park is uh, has brought dinosaurs back to life, goes horribly wrong.
Okay. The log line there is a hook. I don't know who the protagonist is. I don't know what the adventure is. I don't know anything about the story. The tagline is the tagline, right? That's what they use, right? Taglines are pure marketing department. Okay, you don't have to worry about. They're going to come up with their own tagline. The publisher. Don't worry about the tagline. Okay, but this is a hook. Okay, and it's a good one. I mean, that's not a bad one, but it captures the essence, but it doesn't tell me anything. Okay, does that make sense? But you see where she went with this. This is what most people do. That's why you use the machine. So let's do the machine real quick. Let's pick a victim. And we're gonna do one. Now it's gonna be hard because I don't know your story. I don't know you. You don't know your story, maybe. So it's gonna be this is iffy, but I want to at least get one of these done to show you in practice. So somebody step up and be the brave person, and let's do it.
And if you don't want to share, don't worry, we will cut it out of the recording if that's what you would like. But if you want to at least get Jeff to look at what you've got, don't be afraid.
I can do mine,
Okay.
but I think mine is more of a premise line.
Well, I'm going to ask you to pitch me your story first before we even do anything. So that's okay.
Okay.
So just give me your premise line.
All right. When a summer intern with a traumatic past accidentally strands her team in a magical world, she must face arrogant mages, hide from dragons, and above all, she must guard her heart against the perfect guy who's promised to someone else.
Okay. That's a great example. And again, I'm gonna just be frank with everybody here. I'm not, this is nothing personal or anything, but that is a bunch of high level generic fantasy gobbledygook that doesn't tell me anything about what the story is. But you've got all the elements, so I suspect it's all there. Okay. This doesn't distinguish itself from any dragon fantasy world story that I could even think of. Okay, there's nothing pulling this into originality. So let's find those pieces. Okay. So
Yes.
this is a perfectly good start, honestly, Uh, we've got several questions here though first. Do we want to take those first, Linda? Belinda, Bobby, and Todd?
I kept myself muted there. I would say go ahead and let's work on Natalie's, and then we'll go
Okay,
back
okay,
and
okay.
then we'll go back and ask
All
her.
right. So when you say magical world, what is that? Where are we on another planet? Are we on the Earth? Are we in some other world?
It's a different world.
Okay, what world? What what's the magical system?
Well, it's mostly elemental.
Okay. So, but what's the world? Is it medieval? Is it modern? Is it advanced civilizations?
I think it's a mix.
Okay.
There's a little bit of like there are different species on the world, and some of them are pretty primitive, and some of them are very advanced. So it's a mix of both.
Okay. So, is this correct?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Who's the protagonist?
Summer intern with a traumatic past.
Say that again.
She's a summer intern with a traumatic past.
How old?
22.
Um, intern with what?
She's got
What?
some trauma in her past.
No, what is her interning? What is she interning
Oh,
to be?
she's an admin assistant.
Okay, so young a young clerk.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
Sort of, yes. She basically does the paperwork at an archaeological dig.
Yeah, we don't need any of that. Oh, well,
No, no.
well, now maybe not. So, um, we'll just say archaeological clerk for now.
Okay.
Okay. Traumatic past tells us absolutely nothing. So what is her problem? What's her emotional problem? Is
She's a
she
victim of assault.
okay? So is she fearful? Is she aggressive? Is she
No, she's got PTSD.
okay? Do they know about PTSD on this alien world?
No, they don't.
Okay, so that won't work. So how would you describe her emotionally?
Well, she doesn't trust people. She shies away from touch.
Just stop right there. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, well, this isn't going to be perfect. Just,
No. But that's a really good start.
but do you see how this is already different?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's she want?
Well, she came to this place to
What is
this
her
article.
story goal? Don't know. I don't have to know
Her
anything.
story goal is like uh first like the initial story goal is she wants adventure.
What is the story goal at the end? What does she want?
Well, she wants to belong. She wants to get back to her own world from that magical one since she dragged everybody else with her. It's basically her fault. And yeah, she wants
So she wants to go home.
yeah, okay.
So she's Dorothy.
Ish.
Okay, so a young, distrustful archaeological clerk. What's getting in the way of her doing that?
Well, a lot of things. For one, she's in this magical world and she is not
What's who's the main opposition?
the mages, the magical people in that other world.
In the mages, who's the mage trying to stop her?
Could it be more than one?
Well, there will be more than one, but you have to write this.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a dramatic focus.
Mm.
Well, let me ask you an obvious question. What's the genre other than fantasy?
It's romantasy.
Okay, so it's a romantasy. So
Yeah.
teams with who's she going to be teaming with?
She's gonna be teaming with the king.
Any old king?
No. There's this magical kingdom and there's one king.
Teams with
The Mage King.
a a mage king to do what?
To
What
find
are
her
they
way
trying
back.
to
Yeah,
do?
to find her way back.
To find her way back home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So we've got some big elements here, okay? We know the world, we know the character, we know who the core relationship's going to be with, the Mage King, and their objective is to get her back home. Okay, compare this to what you had before. Do you see a
Mm-hmm.
difference?
Well, there's a big difference, yes.
Yes. Okay. But now we're up against the same problem. What's the challenge? Why do the other mages care whether she gets home or not?
Um, because they can't explain how she got there in the first place, and they want to
Okay,
figure out like
that
unless she figures out how in the world she gamed the system and got to this magical world that they're not gonna let her go.
so she has something they want.
Basically, yes. She
Okay.
got this like this workaround accidentally. Like she's a normal human and they're mages and the portal is magical and somehow she got through.
Okay, so the key then, okay, see the magic words keep coming. So it's not that she's an archaeological clerk, that's irrelevant. The thing that's really relevant here is she has no magic.
No, she has no magic.
Okay, so a distrustful, non-magical woman, a young woman,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of words, but that's okay. All that's got to go. But so this describes her, correct?
Yes.
Teams with a mage king to return to her normal world,
Mm-hmm.
but finds herself up against powerful. See, you've got to identify one powerful mage who wants her
Okay.
who wants her in a cage somewhere so he can experiment and find out what the hell's going on. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
they're worried about why she got there, how she got there. Okay, how are they going to figure that out? They've got to get her, right? Is that part of the story?
So sort of, yes. Not quite that rigid. There's no cages involved, but yeah.
Well, but they're going to have to get her. Then once they get her, what are they going to do with her? What's
Mm.
the plan? Do you is there a plan?
Uh, Sort of a very loose plan because the mages are trying they're doing all kinds of tests like to figure out how she
Oh,
did it
okay.
and
You've got in a fantasy, you've got to get specific. The bad guys have to have a plan. She and he, the king, have to have a plan. How is she going to get home? I've got to go here and get this goodie. I've got to go there and get that goodie. I've got to go talk to this person over here. They've got to go on a journey that the bad guys are going to intervene in from time to time to stop them from getting moving forward. And then at the doom moment, which is a part of every story ever that's ever been written, three-quarters of the way through the book, they've got to get her. All is lost. Oh my God, Dark Night of the Soul, whatever you want to call it. That's
well
got to happen.
they gotta sort of like when they first got to the magical world they captured them like right there and then so
Okay, then you've blown your wad.
uh
You if she gets to the magical, well, let me ask this question. See, here's where we get into story structure problems.
mhm.
Where in her journey does this story start?
Well it's
Is she on her normal world?
yeah it starts in the normal world.
Okay, how much of the book is going to be there?
The first act.
What does that mean?
It means that you know like they
Page wise.
uh probably okay page wise probably about I don't know 50, 60 pages in.
No, my advice anyway. You take it that and 50 cents will get you a dial tone. But what I would recommend is the very opening of this is a very standard genre kind of setup. You've
Mhm.
got the character in their world. We see what the normal world is. Something crazy weird happens. I don't know what it's going to be that she does or gets
Mhm,
involved
mhm,
with, or
mhm.
turns down the wrong alley, whatever it is, ends up in the new magical world. When you look at something like Outlander, okay, she ends up going into the stones pretty damn fast.
That
Okay,
was still like 3 or 4 chapters in.
that's perfect. A chapter in these books are 8 to 12 pages long.
Oh, mine are shorter.
Well, that's even better.
Mhm,
That's even better if you can pull that off. But you want, so that's the inciting incident is when she ends up on that planet, correct?
okay.
Okay. They can't catch her there. Then you've blown your wad. Then you don't get to set up the world, you don't get to set up the opposition, you don't get to set up the struggle of, okay, I'm a fish out of water. We have to see that. We've got to see her develop the relationship with the king. But now if you want them to catch her early in the story, she's got to get away early in the story. You can't have her captured the whole time. That's I don't think that's going to work. I'm not sure how you're going to make that
Okay,
work.
no, no, no. I see your point. It's just I'm just trying like to
Yeah, yeah,
figure
yeah.
how to
So,
read
so,
structure.
so from a log line perspective, and see, this is why you have to know your story before you write them. So she finds herself up against the evil mage,
Uh, yeah,
bent,
okay.
bent on getting her secret at all costs. And she must choose between losing the mage king to evil or being stranded forever in a world she doesn't belong in.
Okay. No, I see that. Like, yeah, that sounds really amazing. I just gotta tweak it for my particular story.
And now I'm just kind of riffing
No,
here
no,
on my
no, no, no. It sounds really good. I would totally read that story.
But you see how we got here.
Yes, yes, I do.
Now you would go back and just start reworking the crap out of this thing.
Yeah.
Keeping it, just really slowly massaging this until it captures what's going on. But compare this to what you originally said.
No, this one is a lot more specific. I have to admit.
Yeah, this is a book. And I'm not judging your book, but by saying it's generic.
No, no, no. It's
Hunger Games is this. Okay. I mean, it's the same damn thing. Okay. So this is a very popular fantasy genre take, right? So, okay. So there we go.
excellent.
That-
Thank you.
Now you all see the process of how you do this. But you saw where we got stuck. Moral problem. What's the challenge? Who's the opposition? Basic story structure questions. You can't write a log line unless you know them. Okay, questions? We can field some questions. And I'm fine going over.
Okay, I'm looking back to see some of the questions here. So it looks like a couple people have posted some ideas. Um, Belinda says, an ambitious milliner's assistant in Belle Epic, France, is forced to work with a beautiful noblewoman fleeing an unwanted marriage, but falls in love with her, risking both their futures. And I think Belinda's here. If you want to come off mute and talk anymore, it's up to you.
I am here.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have time to maybe work through this a little?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Because you got some juice there.
Compelling. It needs to be compelling.
Okay. So, what's the world?
Belle Epoque, France.
What year?
Well, that's the Belle Epoque is 1880s, 1890s. It's an era. So you can just say 1882, or you can say Belle Epoque.
1880s, France. There's the world. But what's the world? Are we in a bunch of peasants? Are we in, Versailles?
We're in Paris at a milliner shop. So it's a combination of working class people and noble people.
But where are we mostly?
We're in the milliner shop, the millinery.
Okay. Well, we'll just leave this for now. Who's the protagonist?
An ambitious milliner's assistant.
What does that mean?
That means she wants to be rich and successful at millinery. She wants to
What
take over
what
the
is
shop.
what is millinery? Is that hat making?
Hat making. Yeah.
Okay.
She wants to take over the hat making shop.
How old is she?
23.
How do you spell it?
Milliner.
And now, so her goal is to become rich.
Yes.
Okay. How will she know when she's rich? What will she have? Is it just a matter of dollars in the bank?
She'll own the shop, the milliner shop.
Okay. What's the genre?
It's a romance.
Okay. Who's the lover?
A beautiful noblewoman fleeing an unwanted marriage.
Okay. If I were to ask you what's the adventure, what would you say the adventure is?
The adventure is there's a the the adventure is that they're going to fall in love despite the problems thrown their way by the milliner wanting to be successful and support her family who are poor,
Okay.
and the
Can you can you
noblewoman
get
needs
can you
states.
get more concrete?
Okay, so um the about the adventure.
Yes.
I mean, they don't want to fall in love because they feel like it would ruin everything.
That's a high level emotional description, but doesn't tell me what's going on.
In
What
this
are they going to
story,
be what are they going to be doing?
making hats and trying to stay out of trouble.
Okay, that's about 2 chapters. Then
Yeah.
what?
Um,
What does staying
well,
out of trouble mean?
well, so the one is trying to support her family with a disabled brother, and the other is trying to stay hidden from her family who want to force her into a marriage.
Okay, how do they meet?
The noblewoman comes to the milliner shop and decides she's going to try to be a milliner too. So she, so they, so she runs away from home, and and
Who,
convinces the milliner, the person who,
who's the protagonist?
the milliner, the millinery
How do
assistant,
you know that?
because she has the strongest need to change because she's absolutely convinced that love is not for her. She's very like um focused on her career and like I need to do this to, so say, support my family and make sure that they're okay. I don't have any room in my life for love. The noblewoman's like, I'm just out of this marriage, and hey, look, this is a pretty lady. I like her. So she doesn't have a whole lot of conflict in terms of falling in love. She just wants to fall in love because it feels good to her. But the other one's like, no, absolutely not. We're not doing this.
Okay, no, that's a perfectly good setup. So one is running from love, the other is just wanting to find love.
Yes.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Who's trying to stop them?
The external conflict is the shop owner does not allow fraternization in her employees. Even though she forces them to share rooms because she wants to keep them close. She's like, yes, but no hanky panky. You have to share a room, but no hanky panky.
So does he know she's a noblewoman?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, she knows.
Okay. No, does the guy?
There is no guy. There's a
No,
shop
the
owners.
shop owner.
It's all women. They're pretty much all women except for
Okay,
the,
so does
yeah.
the shop owner know?
Oh yeah, she knows. She actually really loves that because she's like, "Ooh, you're gonna make my store
Okay.
classier."
I would suggest, well, I would suggest, if you're talking about 1880s France,
Hmm.
um, y- okay, there's a thing called Chekhov's rifle.
Yes.
Anybody know what that is? Yeah.
The rifle or the gun? If you pick up a gun, you have to use it. If you show a gun, you have to use it.
Basically, yeah, if you put
Right.
a loaded gun on stage in act one, it's got to go off by act three. The
Right.
idea, the idea is that if you set up an expectation, you must deliver it.
Hmm.
Okay. You're setting up an expectation here and you're blowing it off.
Okay.
And you're blowing off a huge amount of conflict and tension and mystery.
Hmm.
Um, by not having the noblewoman run away and have that be a huge problem for the family. and then
her family?
find her sanctuary in this shop but doesn't tell anybody who she is.
Hmm.
She's got to keep it a secret.
She does. That is a big secret. She's like,
Well,
there
then then
is a
then
huge.
the shop owner can't know who she is.
Well, she knows she's a nobleman. She doesn't know
You
who she.
can't no.
Mm.
It's got to be Prince and the Pauper. Okay. That's what it's got to be. Because if she's found, all hell will break loose.
Yes.
So now we've got a secret to keep, which in a romance is critical for the plot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And the protagonist doesn't know who she is either. This
Well,
is
it's kind of obvious. She's got the accent and everything. I
well,
mean,
then she needs to cover it up, or she needs to, you know, there's lots of ways around that one. But
hmm.
she's got, but or if she reveals it to the protagonist, it's got to be, our dirty little secret, and you can't tell anyone. And now there's got to be somebody pursuing her. Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they've
But
got, and
they
then they've
don't
got, go ahead.
they don't find her until they don't find her until the plot point two. That's plot point two is she's discovered.
What does plot point two mean?
It's after the midpoint. It's when everything sort of like falls to
Okay.
pieces.
Okay. So you're gonna have lots of plot points.
That's our dark night of the soul.
That's the Dark Knight of
Yeah.
the Soul.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Correct. Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly. Sorry. Plot point.
That's the
Yeah. That's when
yeah. Okay. The doom moment.
she's forced to be public, and she walks into the
Okay.
shop, and she's like, "Go wait on that." And the person turns around, and it's her mother's best friend, and she's like, "Oh crap! Now they found me."
Okay. So okay. So this is taking some form. Little. So in 1880s Paris, a young milliner focused on avoiding love in favor of success. Um, uh,
With a secret identity. Is that what you're saying?
well,
A runaway noble
where
woman?
this has to go is, and again, I'm not saying this is all right, but she meets a young trainee who sparks and love sparks fly, even if that's not true, something it's going to eventually.
Mm.
Um, but discovers she is a noble woman on the run from her cruel family and must choose between love and getting her dream.
Okay.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this
Yeah.
isn't right, but there's still a big piece that's really unclear here in terms of what's missing is the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
What's yeah.
what is the challenge that they're facing, which is the noble family hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the other challenge, I would suggest shop owner finding out and using that against the protagonist,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and eventually turns on them and turns them in.
She doesn't have a lot of incentive to turn her in though, because it's not like
Well,
yours.
you need to give her incentive because
Okay.
you've got to create blood in the water here. See, if her goal is to get the shop, that dream has to be on the line.
Maybe you
There's
could
got to
make
be
it like there's a reward or something for the
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
her being
a huge,
discovered.
huge reward.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
there's got to be an incentive for her to have to make a difficult choice of my dream or love, because that's how you're setting this up. Which
Mm-hmm.
is more
Mm-hmm.
important? Obviously, she wants the shop for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
That's her moral problem, and you got to figure out what that is,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
those are the buttons the other lover is going to push,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's your conundrum.
Okay.
So I would also, if you want to add another layer of complexity, I think you need it here, I would actually have her get married off.
Mm.
She
Hmm.
is in fact married and runs right after the wedding. Now she's got the guy coming after her. She's got the family coming after her. It's a scandal in the royal court. It's, oh my God.
How would you resolve that though? That's the thing is you t write yourself into a corner that way.
Well, no, then you write yourself out of it. So what is the resolution? The protagonist has to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
How did they resolve it in Pauper?
Oh, Prince and the Pauper?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
That what you got? That's what you got here in
Hmm.
a certain level.
Right.
So I don't remember either.
I don't remember.
But but that's she's so the woman has to get captured again. She's got to get dragged back to the political marriage.
She does get dragged back, but then she
Okay,
says,
then that leads you to the final battle, which is the other stage you all have to have in your books.
mm-hmm.
This is the point in the story where the protagonist must face their own emotional past. This is the point in the story. We haven't talked about the wounding event, but it's really critical. The wounding is where the moral problem comes from, and
Mm-hmm.
it happens when they're kids, not
Right.
when they're adults. So something happened. Let me give you a quick example. Okay, just a quick one of how this is what a story arc is. There's no such things as story arcs. They don't exist. Okay, they're a myth. Characters do not grow in arcs. That's not how it happens. It's more like a heart attack.
Fits and
Okay.
starts.
And but when you say story arc, all people think about is, well, they start here and then they go here and then we're done. No, there's a chain of things I call the chain of emotional change that makes that arc thing work. Starts with the wounding, ends with the final battle and change. Okay. All along the way, there's a bunch of pieces that you got to connect with story math, the logic of the story. Okay. The wounding is where it starts. Here's an example. 14-year-old kid feels courage, feels brave, feels strong, feels courageous. He beats up the bullies at school. Nobody bugs him because he stands up and he fights. And he knows it. I'm courageous. So he's feeling his oats, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
a positive thing. He's embraced an emotional strength. Comes home, finds daddy beating up mommy. Oh my gosh, I got to do something about this. I'm courageous. I can get this. I'm going to stop daddy. Intervenes. 14-year-old kid. Daddy beats the crap out of him. nearly kills him, and then kills mommy. And then he turns to the kid and he says, "You little shit, if you kept your nose out of this, your mother would still be alive. I should kill you, but I'm going to leave you alive because I want you to know that you're responsible for your mother's death." Gets in the car, drives off, never seen again. Now we have an emotional origin story. What is this kid going to do next?
I think I've read this story before. I can't remember what it was.
I just made it up, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But let me put it this way. What is he never going to do again?
He's never going to stand up for himself.
Yeah. Why would he do that? Why would he make that choice? Being courageous is a good thing.
He's operating now. I mean, after that event, he is operating out of serious like guilt, fear. I mean, he's got major, you have given him major baggage to deal with.
Courage, yes. Courage is no longer a strength.
Mm-mm.
Courage is what kills people. So the first thing he's going to do is, I'm never going to do that again. And he kills courage in the moment. It's the emotional thing that dies in him. And that is so painful, he must slather it over with something to assuage that pain. That's the moral blind spot. That's his problem. Well, other people are courageous and people don't die. But when I'm courageous, people die. Why? What's wrong with my courage that my courage fails? It's because I'm weak. Another weak option. Or it's because I'm incapable of accomplishing anything. I'm incompetent. It's the judgment about themselves that's fundamentally wrong that makes sense of what just happened. And that becomes their motivation. I'm incompetent. Just go with that one because we already did weak. Slathers over courage. It's still there under the surface, but now it's got a crust on it of I'm not enough. It's generic. It's perfectly fine. Why aren't they enough? Because I'm incompetent. And years and years and years of that becomes the story. And they forget all about the original issue. Courage is still under the surface, waiting to be found again. But now they're going to live a life of somebody who is going to either prove how bad they are or overcompensate and show how competent they are. Okay, they're going to go one of those two directions. And the story you're going to tell is the journey of how they get from killing courage to reclaiming it in the end in the final battle. They discover, because of what you put them through, they will discover their original wound was always there. They're going to reclaim it on steroids at the end and use it to win the day. So you've got a full circle. That's what the arc is. Arcs don't mean crap if you don't connect it to why they've got the problem in the first place. You see how that's different than just saying they have to learn how to be a better person and they become a really nice guy at the end. What? What? But that's how most people write books. But now we know what went wrong, what was the problem, what they got to get. It's that whole argument, what they need versus what they want, right? They want the truck, but what they really need is learn how not to be greedy. That doesn't mean anything either. This does mean something. This gives you a clear trajectory from wound to ending. And the war between those two spots is their arc, quote unquote. Them facing that, because the story has to, at least in three times, offer them the opportunity to change. Okay, Betty, you're being a real jerk here. You got success or you got love. Why don't you go for love? No, 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 no. I can't do that. I'm in my blind spot. I'm in fear. I'm going to make the wrong choice. Okay. Then the story comes back and does it again, and then does it again, and then does it as many times as you want. But we see that offer, what I call the offer refusal loop, over and over and over again to show that they're finally going to come to a point where they realize, I'm the problem. That's the do moment. That's what the do moment's all about. It's not just a plot point of everything goes wrong. It's they realize if they don't stop doing things the way they've been doing it, all will be lost. The bad guy's going to win. The evil mage is going to kill me. I've got to change. I don't know what that means yet. I've still got a quarter of the book to get through. That's where I'm going to learn how to do that with my new team, because usually at that midpoint, at that do moment, they get isolated, they lose their friends, they get the lover is pissed off and walks away, blah blah blah. Okay, they're on their own. Now they've got to come up with a new plan because the old one clearly isn't going to work. I'm giving you a lot of story structure stuff here, but this is what you've got to go through to make this work and make sense. Okay, but you see already we've got a little bit more juice going on here. Would you agree?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, all right. So
Thanks.
That
it was
was fantastic.
it was a good illustration of why you have to understand the story structure of your story before you do this. I keep beating on that horse, but that's why it's so important. So was this?
I am sure I'm speaking for everyone by like saying, wow, mind blown. Because I mean, I know I'm thinking for myself about my own story. I've got a really wounded character, but I haven't been as focused on how she's trying to hide it, how she's trying to bury and be in denial about what's going on with her.
The key to getting there is to get rid of your story. Only deal with the character and their emotional problem. No mages, no noble families. No, get rid of all the what I call it the whistles and bells. Get rid of all the whistles and bells and find this human being, because they would have this problem whether they were fighting aliens or Richelieu. It doesn't matter. Okay, whether they're fighting evil mages or whether they're up against, the Nazi high command, it doesn't matter. That problem would exist regardless of the world you're putting them in. Okay, that's the first key. Okay. The other key is learn story structure. Get anatomy of a premise line.
Yeah, I think it gives us all a lot to really think about because, um, really understanding not only what your character's problem is, but how they are burying it and
Yeah,
fooling themselves and
that's the middle of your book. That's what stops you from having an episodic, mushy middle.
Mhm.
That moral component. I'll end with this last point between passive and active protagonists. The passive protagonist is a situation. The character finds themselves in a problem or a mystery or whatever it is, and it's situational. They walk through the wrong door at the wrong time. Oh, I got a problem. And now they've got to solve it. They're being pushed by events. They're reacting to the problems that come up, but it's all reactive. It's not active dramatically. They're a leaf on the wind. The active protagonist is, I have a blind spot I'm acting out of. I face a problem. I'm solving the problem out of my blind spot, always making the wrong choice. And the wrong choice is to protect my blind spot. Creates a new problem because they did that and didn't do it, quote, the right way. Now I've got a new problem I've got to deal with. I'm not going to deal with it except through my blind spot. So I'm going to make another bad choice. They're creating their own hell. That's dramatically active, not passive. The other character is just a leaf, like I said, a leaf on the wind getting pushed by events and reacting in the moment. That's it. Now that can be enough, but it's got to be a hell of an entertaining story to hold the reader. Jurassic Park is a perfect example. There's no moral components in that book. There's no moral drivers. There's none. Okay, it's just dinosaurs going to eat people, and how bad is it going to get? That's all it is. Not bad, not wrong. Same thing on Andromeda Strain. Same thing. It's a cool story, but it doesn't go beyond the problem ever. Okay, so okay. I'll let you guys.
Fantastic. I think everybody can agree that we could sit and talk to Jeff for a few more hours. I put links to your books at the beginning of the chat. So if anybody missed those, go back and look, or just go out and search for him on either go to his website or go to Amazon and type in Jeff Lyons. Jeff, we thank you so much for this. I mean, wow, I am going away with a lot to think about. I hope everybody else is too. This has been fantastic. We just really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us.
You're all very welcome, and I'll send the free swag along later. And
Okay, and I will post that in the community under this event for everybody.
okay.
Okay, thanks everybody.